This inspires Arjuna to raise questions on the nature of the one who is fit for immortality. That's the next chapter, but I think we'll have a little interlude on meditation. Okay? First, review question on this third chapter. In the Gita, it is said that wise souls who know the truth of Sat and Asat do not grieve either for the living or the dead. Explain. My strong suggestion is you take out a notebook over the weekend and just write down your own answers. You'll be kind of familiar with the subject and the exam will be easy for you. Do it. Do it. Not at the last minute, but as we finish. Why do we tend to identify with things that are asat, and how does this bring about suffering? Distinguish between deha and dehi. With this understanding, explore the question, who are you truly? Discuss the concept of the evolving soul according to the Indian wisdom tradition. What is meant by titiksha? Do you see it as something important to nurture, and if so, how? What is meant by amritam according to the Gita, and how does one become fit to attain it? Okay, quickly I thought I'll give you some material on the meditation. Once seated, train yourself gently and without self-judgment to actually meditate rather than engage in some more entertaining mental activity. What's a more entertaining mental activity?
So if I'm sitting alone,
Yeah.
so I'll think about some stuff.
What stuff?
So I mean, if I'm not busy, I'll think of maps. And
Maps?
politics.
What maps?
So basically, so it's,
You like maps?
Yes, sir.
Maps of the world?
Yes, sir.
Like which place?
So basically, there's a conflict going on between Ukraine and Russia. So the
Ukraine and Russia. Wow. I mean, that's good. But that's what you're doing today.
If I'm free, sir, I don't.
If you're
have
free, you'll... My God, I've never heard this. If you're free, you'll sit quietly and visualize a map of Ukraine and Russia. What will you do? I mean, it's not that you want to do it, but it'll happen on its own, right? You sit and something interesting will come up and you'll start thinking. Anybody? What will you think about? So it takes self-awareness to know that your mind wanders. Your mind wanders non-stop. And you have no control over it. You're lost. Do you want to gain control? At least do you want to know where your mind is wandering? It's a huge breakthrough. Okay, so that's what we are trying to do. You see, when you forget meditation, in normal daily life also, we are doing hajar things and we don't know we are doing it. Attention moves spontaneously, helplessly, in three different ways: scanning, getting captured, and alternating. I'm giving you a summary of some ideas in those notes. Scanning. Do you know your mind is always scanning? Right? Why are we always scanning?
Mind needs to grasp something.
You're going on the road and you're scanning, then you see one beautiful girl there, then you get locked there, right? Why do we do this? You're not doing it, yaar. It is spontaneous. This is actually Prakriti is doing it through you. Why? Why do we scan? Those of you who read the notes know the answer. Huh? Looking for threats. You're right. Primitive, when, since now we've touched rebirth, 1 million births back, when you were hunter, dweller, primitive, native, you were really worried because some tiger will jump at you, so you're scanning always for threats. For survival, we need to scan. Who's going to attack me? One more reason is there. That's the reason why your eyes got locked into the female species. Not you. I mean, that's evolution. That's nature. What does nature want from any species? Survival and reproduction. Very simple. You understand? So we've got that reptilian brain in us. It will do it whether we like it or not. Scanning. So it has its use, but it has its shortcomings. There are more shortcomings than you. First of all, there's nothing threatening you when you are sitting for meditation. and you're not going to reproduce there. There's no need. So you're there, but the brain is used to that, so it'll do what it's trained to do. Scanning is when your focus moves from object to object, searching for something of interest. If attention doesn't find anything, it returns to its original focus. This is what happens to all of us. You want to direct attention to your breath, you can do it consciously, but after some time, the unconscious takes over. To sustain attention is impossible, because automatic is scanning, getting captured and alternating. So what is getting captured? Some dog barks, immediately you have no choice, you get stuck there. Okay, when an object like thought, bodily sensation or some external stimulus catches your attention. It could be a thought from inside. Ukraine, Russia, I don't know. But not bad. At least it's a first original thought I've come across. What is your thought about?
I just think about nothing.
Think about nothing is impossible. When you say think about nothing, means nothing is interesting. So that means anything can occupy you.
It's not like that.
Then you actually can think about nothing? No.
I just try to.
Something will be there. It'll be some incident that happened that day, or some thought that's disturbing you. Something for all of us. Agreed? Tell me.
I think about my aim in life.
Huh?
Aim in life.
That's your normal thing that you think of aim and okay.
Like, it's something I want to be, whether I'm doing the right thing.
Ah, so he's saying, am I doing the right thing? Am I moving in the right direction? What do you think of? All army guys here, yeah.
Doing good things. Sir.
Doing good things. Wow. Well, great guy. What do you think of randomly?
Sir, I think about my future.
Your future. You are supposed to live in the present here in meditation. What do you think of?
Usually food.
Food! No, that's right. See, that's very common actually. You think of food. Okay. The third kind of spontaneous movement is when attention alternates between two or more things. This always happens. The example given is when the professor, yesterday I caught one fellow in the class, he was busy doing something. So I asked him, what are you doing? Then I went and saw, drawing some nice curves. Then I said, there's a word in English for what you're doing. Do you know what it is? At least let him learn something. So some other boy said, he's doodling, sir. Doodling is when you scribble something. If you can draw a cartoon of the professor, I think that's real art. But doodling, anyway, you can do something. So when you do this, and it's explained in these notes also, you think you're doing both. I can hear what he's saying, a bending moment and shear force and all that, and this doodling. But actually you are alternating. And there's an apparent continuity. This multitasking is a myth. You can never do multitasking. You can only do one task at one moment and move to the next. And it can be a total mess. So it's keeping it steady is not easy. So this is very common, alternating. Now there is something called attention and something called awareness. Awareness can be both extrospective or introspective. Introspective peripheral awareness means the objects of consciousness are internal, thoughts, feelings, states and activities of mind. So you see, I need to exercise, the tea is getting cold, my leg is asleep, okay, I love this song, oh I have to do taxes, the budget is up, it's warm and sunny, and then in the middle of it you can draw your map of Ukraine and Russia, and you can think of all the good things that you have to do, and your food is here, I don't know, is there food here? No, so your food. So all this will come, and actually you're alternating among all of them. Right? So to be aware of that is fantastic, because this you're not aware of. You understand? It's going on spontaneously, you don't even know what's going on. So awareness is actually to say, oh my God, I'm thinking of all these things. Actually, you're not thinking only of Ukraine and Russia. That's actually a very minor part. But you can't share with us what else you are seeing. Don't laugh because you don't even know what's going on. That's the truth. You don't know. So much of tamasha is going on, you don't know. You can only remember what is standing out, like this map of Ukraine and Russia, for whatever reason. Okay. So, a basic difference between peripheral awareness and attention is peripheral awareness is holistic, relational, contextual. I'm talking about consciously being aware. You see, in one sweep you can take in the class. But it's still only a broad thing, you're not narrowly focused on anything. Your mind naturally looks at things like you went to sleep, it got focused there. That is attention. This is awareness. Got it? Attention isolates and analyzes, it zooms in, it needs time. This doesn't need, this is always in the present. Peripheral awareness filters all incoming information. See, it filtered everything and then it selects something to pay attention to. Attention selects information from awareness, and they kind of train each other. Peripheral awareness acts as a watchful alert system. Attention hones in on objects. Alert system because something that needs attention. You're walking and a car may come and hit you, so you need awareness to see where you're going. Otherwise you're lost in thought, you can get hit. One of the biggest problems is cell phones. People are crossing the road, happily chatting away, not knowing that cars are there, and even when you drive, even when you're on the bicycle, people are using phones. So you can't do two things at the same time. Peripheral awareness involves less processing, quicker response. Attention involves more processing, lower response. It's kind of spontaneous. Peripheral awareness is less personal and more objective. It's actually impersonal. They say it's more right brain. Attention is more self-centered. You must get something. The ego has a role in this. Peripheral awareness can be both introspective, that means looking inward at thoughts, feelings, moods, states of being, and extrospective, which means seeing what's happening outside, including your sensations in the body. That's extrospective. And means you can be aware of what's going on inside you and outside you at the same time. But awareness isolates, it can do only one at a time. Can be introspective or extrospective. Attention can do only one at a time. So if you remember, we asked you to train in 2 stages of meditation. The first stage was establish a practice, most difficult stage. It's a routine, it's like brushing your teeth. Very difficult, but once you got used to it, you can't stop it. That's what I want you to do by this end of this course. Stage 1, make it a habit. I'm suggesting 20 minutes a day. 20 minutes a day, but you can start with 10 minutes if you want. Find time. Preferably the same time every day. Sit. It's a training. It's a very useful training. So, it's 4 steps. First step, establish an open, relaxed awareness and attention, letting in everything in the present. So, your first job is just to allow awareness to take on everything that's going on in the present. The only condition is present. Could be anything. So first be aware. Breathe deeply. Take in everything. Relax. Second is you kind of limit the scope to your body sensations. Right now you're sitting, you can feel the cushion, you can feel the back, you can feel your breathing, you can feel the heartbeat if you want. You're suddenly aware. Next, you zoom in on the breath alone. The breath is traveling through your nose into your lungs. The body is heaving. You can actually feel it. The breath is very subtle. The breath contains spirit in it as well. So you can really feel the breath. Finally, to master it, you must zoom into a small region. Either you can take your abdomen or here recommends the nostrils. Okay, so finally step for focus on sensations of the breath at the nose, but continue to be aware of everything else. This is stage 1. Keep doing it every day. Most difficult stage if you've never meditated before. Then stage 2, remember we did this? Remember we did this? Now, to hold that breath there, you have to play some games. And the ticking sound is a very useful thing, and we can hear it now. Do it. Every 5 or 6 ticks, and try to feel it in the nostril. In breath, pause, next 6 ticks, out breath. Close your eyes for better focus. Posture, you should sit vertically. One minute. Open your eyes. Every now and then, every 1 hour or so, take a break and for 5 minutes do this. It will make a huge difference to your life. Your body will relax. After some time you realize you're not breathing, but everything is happening on its own, and you're relaxed and calm and tuned and centered. Try it. So this is what you need to do in stage 2. Converge on attention on the breath at the nose. To keep the mind tied, you follow the breath. That means in breath, out breath. Do some game so that you know the start, the middle, the end, the pause. So it's on track, but even the best meditators can't hang on to it for long. Suddenly you'll remember something. Actually, the mind is waiting to be distracted because it's been trained to scan. So finally you get distracted. Okay? And after some time, very quickly you will forget that you are supposed to be focusing on the object of meditation. You get caught in object-centered awareness. You get locked there, and then there's a whole train of thoughts from Russia to Ukraine to US. Then he'll think of Trump and Mexico and God knows where, and all the IT sector, the job that he imagined has vanished away now, etc., etc. Then suddenly you realize, I'm supposed to be meditating, and then you come back, you wake up. By the way, this you have no control over. Even this you have no control over. The waking up also happens on its own, luckily for you. In the morning you wake up not because you want to wake up, because you have no choice. When you wake up, you should do something, not suddenly go back to. You should pause to do what? You've read it? Tell me. You've not read that. You should pat yourself on, I've woken up. You understand? That's an aha moment because you have got back to consciousness. You're not lost anymore. You were lost till now. It's a breakthrough moment, and you relish it, and then you go back to doing it, happy to have woken up, and you keep, everything is intention. You keep that intention strong. I'm not going to lose it again. And stay on that, but then you practice again, you'll get lost. If you train daily, what do you think will happen? Guaranteed. These gaps where you got lost will become much less. Guaranteed. And when you reach stage 5, stage 6, you won't ever lose it. It'll be somewhere there. It may not be the focus of attention, but it'll be there in the awareness, field of awareness at least. Okay, here's a joke. The mind is not a single thing, but rather a collective of many different mental processes. Each has its own purpose and goals, but all try to serve the happiness and well-being of the whole. So remember, you're not doing anything wrong in getting distracted. We are a company of many subparts. Each subpart is trying to do something for your good. Right? They are all well intentioned. Yeah.
Why does it happen that in certain situations or subjects, distractions are lesser, but not in the others?
He's asking why is it that you're talking about classes. In some contexts the distractions are less, in others the distractions are more. Tell me why. Give an example. So we all will appreciate what you're saying. Give the two contexts, if you don't mind.
Like in my case, if it comes to, say, a particular sport,
Particular sport, yeah.
so I know that at that time I am more focused.
Yeah. See, athletics and sports are beautiful because if you really play well and you're enjoying it, you are said to be in the zone, totally conscious, there's no distraction, and you're enjoying it. And joy is part of that. Give me another example where you're kind of off. Take from IIT, without mentioning which subject it was. You're lost. Some integral differential equations are being solved there, and when something goes above your head, what will you do? Or you want something more interesting. Your mind is scanning for something interesting. This stupid subject is not interesting. It is boring. You don't even understand what's going on. So you bring to mind something of interest. It's normal. Nothing wrong with it.
So my point is, how can what we are trying to do here is to train ourselves to focus on anything, right?
Right.
So that is what, if I want to today focus on, say, differential equation, I should be able to.
Right.
That is what we are trying to do.
Right.
But
The way you can do that is by learning to meditate. That's what we're saying. You can do it. You can focus on anything you want to focus on. They are obedient to your wish. Your intentions are very strong. That will happen. Not forcibly. You can't help it. You're wide awake. That is being awakened. Good question. Okay. Mind is not a single thing, but rather a collective of many different mental processes. Each has its own purpose and goals, but all try to serve the happiness and well-being of the whole. When you're satisfied with your practice, different parts of the mind urge you toward other sources. Trying to stay focused on the breath can feel like herding cats. So you have a lot of cats. This guy wants to be the boss, so he says, okay, everybody shape up and meditate. Half the fellows have gone to sleep, some are busy looking at Ukraine and Russia, and this, so, oh my God. So it's a mess. This is what's going on inside all of us. The only thing is you've got to enjoy it, as you rightly said. When you're enjoying something, then all the guys show interest. So I've noticed when I crack jokes, even the sleepy fellow will raise one eye and see, what's going on. So you understand, there must be some. Actually, ananda is the key to it. You must enjoy. So find some joy by making the meditation satisfying and enjoyable. The part of the mind that wants to meditate can get other parts to stop resisting and joining. That is the way. You have to win over the guys. We have time for a few verses. So this is the next chapter. Sthita Pratnya.
अर्जुन उवाच स्थितप्रज्ञस्य का भाषा समाधिस्थस्य केशव स्थितधिः किं प्रभाषेत किमासीत व्रजेत किम्.
See, Arjuna has heard all this, these wonderful, idealized condition of being self-realized, being awake, being immortal, and being fit, capable of concentrating, enduring anything. Then he asks a very practical question. How do I recognize such people? If they are there around me, how do I recognize them? Arjuna said, Arjuna Uvacha, what defines the man with steady insight? Sthita Pratnyasya ka bhasha. Steadfast in meditative awareness, Krishna. Samadhistasya Keshava. Steady in wisdom, how would he speak? Sthita diha kim prabhasheta. How would he sit? How would he move? Kim asita vrajeta kim. So he's looking for external indicators. Look, he's sitting like a realized soul. He's got a beard. He's wearing a dress. So he's looking for outer indicators of who is the liberated person who is completely at peace with himself and yoked to the divine. It's a good question. How do you recognize? So he's asking, how does he walk, how does he sit, how does he talk, and so on. So Arjuna's curiosity has been aroused by Krishna's words of wisdom in the 2nd chapter of the Gita. Although he remains afflicted by Vishada, despair, he asks for more details about the nature of a man who has rendered himself fit for immortality. In this verse, such a wise person has been referred to by Arjuna in 3 different ways: Sthita Pratnya, Sthita Dhi, and Samadhistha. Common to all 3 is a steady state situation, Sthita or Stha. What is said to be steady here? It is Pratnya and Dhi, both implying wisdom, insight, or deep understanding. The term Samadhi implies a state of meditative absorption when the mind becomes unwaveringly calm and still or focused one-pointedly. Samadhistha here means to have the mind firmly fixed in communion with the divine self. Arjuna's query is directed to the outward behavior of such a calm and wise hero. How would such a person speak? How would he sit and how would he move about? Are there any special distinguishing features in the outward actions that would set apart such an individual? This is a practical query from a practical man. It is rather ironic that Arjuna should pose such a query to Krishna. Why? Who is clearly a Sthita Pratnya himself. So this is the irony, You have all the indicators from the charioteer in front of you, who is really the best Sthita Pratnya you can ever come across, right under your nose, and you don't recognize it. A living example standing right in front of Arjuna. Clearly Arjuna does not recognize the Sthita Pratnya aspect of his charioteer, the divine teacher. So what's the reply? The reply is fantastic. So the word here is Sthita Pratnya, Samadhistasya, and Sthitadi. Reply.
Shri Bhagavan Prajahati yada kaman sarvan parthamanugatan atmanyevatmana tushtah sthita pragnastadochyate.
The blessed Lord said, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, when one leaves behind all desires, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan, arising from the ego mind, Arjuna, Partha manah gatan, and is content in the self by the self, Atmani eva atmanah tushtaha, then he is said to have stable inside. Sthita pratnyas tadochute. The outward signs of a calm and wise hero are not that easy to discern. Perhaps there are no such telling outward signs. Is it all internal? The divine teacher identifies 2 clear features of the Sthita Pratnya: freedom from desire and inner contentment from abiding in the self. Both of these features are clearly internal in nature, independent of the external mannerisms of the person, how he talks, walks, sits, etc. So 2 qualities. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyev atmana tushtaha sthita pratnyas tadochute. Actually, the verses from here onwards, 18 verses, were Gandhiji's favorite verses. They say he used to listen to them every day. Every day he would listen to these verses. We're going to listen to them in the course of this and the next chapter. But before that, I'll just cover this topic. The first requirement was freedom from desire. And remember we discussed Trishna. Trishna was a word it's popular in Buddhism. Let's look at that. Desires typically show entrapment in ego-driven acts. Behind these desires lurks the false self, the ego self, the ahankara, with which one habitually identifies. Lacking the true quality of Sat, true being, it seeks happiness in various forms of Asat, false becoming. Thus it remains confused, mistakenly entangled in a false show. Failing to find enduring fulfillment, it keeps oscillating in cycles of hope and fear. That's our daily life. Desires keep multiplying endlessly, acquiring new forms, but never satiating. As the Buddha pointed out, there is a perennial thirst, a Trishna for happiness. Trishna. The Buddha, in his own inner journey, he came up with this theory that this is what drives people. And there are three kinds of Trishna. Trishna in Sanskrit literally means thirst. It seeks relentlessly to be quenched, causing unease and restlessness. The Buddha is said to have defined three types of Trishna. Kama Trishna is the desire for and attachment to sense pleasures, wealth and power, and also to ideas and ideals, views, opinions, theories, conceptions and beliefs. But pleasure can turn into pain in various ways. This is the most common type of Trishna. Kama Trishna can be both material, anything related with property, including intellectual property, will come here. Next is Bhava Trishna. It's a craving to be or become something, to gain a secure foothold, to establish and solidify one's self-image, the ego self, to prevail and dominate. But the ego cannot give us enduring fulfillment. It is never satiated, always oscillating between fear and hope. Then there's a third kind of Trishna. Can you guess what that is? This covers almost everything. Sometimes when things go wrong, when your relationship collapses, when you get fired in your job, when your project doesn't work out the way it will, you get into depression. Then what do you want to do? Vibhava Trishna is a craving when things go badly wrong, to dissociate from pain, anxiety, disappointment, despair, conflict, to be nothing, to die. But depression or suicide can hardly be the solution to the root Trishna. So he put it very simply. Our whole life is an oscillation between Kama Trishna, Bhava Trishna and Vibhava Trishna. That's behind all the moods. Someone wanted what's the story? That's the story. The practice of the yoga of the Gita leads to the realization of fulfillment and freedom from Trishna. At the summit, one becomes both Jivan Mukta and Siddha. Thus, for the normal unenlightened individual, there is an unending series of Kama Trishna, Bhava Trishna and Vibhava Trishna arising in our minds as a play of the lower nature. The divine teacher points out that at a certain stage of spiritual development, one leaves behind and is no longer troubled by Trishna. Instead, one is filled with a superior, supreme inner contentment, which is the second characteristic of the Sthita Prajna. The falling off of desires arising in the mind alone does not render one fit for immortality. Freedom from desire is a necessary but not sufficient condition. This must be accompanied by self-realization. Okay. Just want to end with this. This is again a beautiful verse in the Gita. The arising of any kind of mental activity is referred to as chitta vritti. Chitta is in your mental consciousness. Vritti is vibration. Some vibration of vritti or other invariably stirs up in our restless minds, with one thought or emotion linking up to another, often unconsciously. When this activity is motivated by Trishna, as it often is, we are led to doing some action, karma, engaging with the world outside in some manner or other. This kind of outward movement is described as pravritti. The more we engage, the more we stir up the mental activity in us, the arising of chitta vritti becomes ingrained in us as a strong habit, so much that even when there is no need to think or act, it goes on relentlessly in our minds. Its movement is outward, taking us away from the true center of our being. If we wish to find our true self, the Atman, and be centered there, we need to reverse this movement through a process of withdrawal, through going within rather than outward, described as nivritti. This is what we attempt in meditation. Indeed, in meditative absorption, it is possible to remain free from chitta vritti and hence from trishna, at least for some time. And certainly this is bound to bring a happy relief from the tyranny of relentless thinking, and one may even experience a trance-like condition. However, self-realization is all about finding the indwelling Dehi in us, even amidst the rising of chitta vritti. When this happens as a stable and enduring realization, then one accesses a fountainhead of inner joy, inner contentment in the self by the self. Atmanyeva tushtaha. Atmanyeva atmana tushtaha. This is the condition of the Sthita Prajna. Here is another description of this.
योऽन्तः सुखोऽन्तरारामः तथान्तर्ज्योतिरेव यः स योगी ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं ब्रह्मभूतोऽधिगच्छति.
He who enjoys delight and ease within, yaha antah sukha, antah arama, an inner radiance lit from within, tatha antah jyoti eva yaha, that yogin gets liberated in Brahman. Sah yogi Brahma Nirvanam, realizing oneness with Brahman. Brahma Bhutaha Adhigacchati. So really when you can go inward, you discover three things. Anta Sukham, which no one can take away from you, which you don't need to look for in the market. You don't worry about it, you don't think about it. It's there inside you. Anta Sukham. Along with it comes Antar Arama. Antar Arama means real relaxed ease of being. It will show in your being. You see, you will achieve equanimity at three levels. Equanimity in mind, that's an equipoise. Equanimity in the vital, you're not disturbed, agitated by desires. Equanimity in the physical, you can sit happily for a long time at peace. That is the condition of the Sthita Prajna. The third thing you get, Antar Sukham, Antar Arama. Third thing is Antar Jyoti. You'll also know what is the right thing to do. That inner guidance. That's why this is so important. And you also get liberated. The Sthita Prajna, knowing the reality of Sat and Dehi, turns the awareness inwards to find the evolving soul Antaratman and its source, the true self, the Atman. This leads to the realization that the true source of all happiness lies hidden eternally within one's innermost being. It is the delight of the divine soul, Anta Sukha, which results in a constant sense of divine ease of being, Antararama. Further centered in the self, one also discovers an inner radiance, Antar Jyoti, from which one derives guidance on whatever is required to be done. This inner light Jyoti is endlessly inspiring and uplifting, by which one experiences a lightness of being. This is an enlightened state by which one discovers the true source of all happiness and knowledge. This condition is described here in the Gita and elsewhere as Brahma Nirvanam. The concept of Nirvana, made popular by Buddhism, refers to an ultimate liberated state, a permanent dissolution and extinction of the ego self. The Gita too invokes this concept, but with a slight difference, but with a distinct difference. It is not an extinction into nothingness, but a dissolution into the fullness of the all, known as Brahman. In this condition, inherent gladness comes forth spontaneously. I want to end with a doha from Kabir, who says the same thing in his own unique way. The mystic poet Kabir composed a beautiful couplet, Doha, depicting the irony of searching for happiness in the outside world, not knowing that the true divine source of it is ever present within us. Kasturi Kundal Base. The musk deer carries its fragrance within itself. Mriga dhoonde vanamahi. But it runs around the forest searching for it. You know, the Kasturi man, it can feel the scent which you can buy in expensive perfume shops. But it can also feel the fragrance, but it doesn't realize it's coming from within its own intestine. So what does it do? It searches the whole forest for the source of this fragrance. Jo ghat ghat Ram hai, dunya dekhe nahi. Likewise, the divine bliss is within all of us, but the world fails to realize it. So we chase it everywhere except the source, the fountainhead of it. With that we end. Thank you very much.